metatarsal pads are very often used for pain in the metatarsals, metatarsalgia. So when the metatarsals break through, or the fat padding underneath the metatarsal heads gets too thin. The traditional way to treat that is by adding a bump, like a elevation proximal. So what's proximal?
Towards the body, so towards the heel of the foot.
Yeah, exactly. So not under, but slightly before the metatarsal heads, and then the metatarsal pad pushes in there to passively elevate those metatarsals again. That's how it's traditionally done. What only few people know is that exactly here is a muscle, the adductor hallucis. And this muscle is responsible for building the natural transversal arch. If we add a metatarsal pad, then we put pressure on exactly that muscle, stop the blood flow, and that means the muscle degenerates even more. So
I just want to pause there because that's a really interesting biophysiological point that isn't intrinsically obvious, but all of our muscles are fed blood through a series of ever branching out blood vessels. So a big artery comes in, that branches into arterioles, which branches more into capillaries. So these capillaries are like they're so thin that only one cell of blood can pass through at a time. So any pressure that is happening on them will shut them off and prevent any blood from getting to the end result. Now, there's a lot of redundancy. That's why if you push on your muscle, you don't, the muscle doesn't die immediately. There's lots of other ways the blood can get muscle, the muscle can get blood. But if you do it consistently for a long period of time, the net loss in the nutrients and oxygen that those capillaries provide can degenerate the muscle over time. And I think that's what you're describing.
exactly. And that's why we tend to go another way to treat the metatarsalgia. And that's kind of a secret, but it's one of many. So I think we can share that. But we're talking a lot about our toe elements, and treating the metatarsalgia, we want to train this adductor hallucis muscle and the intrinsic foot muscles here. We do that by slightly elevating the toes, and then you can wait. Let me maybe so we can see that, right? What it does, if we elevate the toes, we trigger this movement here in the foot. So to actively lift the transversal arch again. So with every step, you actively lift it because you get this trigger from the toe elements. And that's why we have a long-term treatment. You train yourself out of metatarsalgia.
I think that's a really, really awesome response. And it's just a different philosophy. And it does explain why when people get our insoles, sometimes they're a little concerned that we didn't take their metatarsalgia into account when we're designing them. Because they're used to, as the person in the chat said, kind of a raised bump or a pad in the metatarsal area that will offload pressure in the short term. But in the long term, that raised support actually has detrimental effects. And we're trying to stop the cause at the root and train the muscles and the ligaments to grow and restore arch function, essentially offloading the metatarsals in a more natural, healthy way that's restorative.